In just 1 year, an estimated millions of trips to the US were cancelled. From Tokyo to Toronto, international travelers are no longer as eager to visit New York or Las Vegas as they once were. But what's even more surprising is that Americans themselves are quietly searching for best countries to retire or cheap homes abroad on search engines, as if they're looking for a way out of the home they were once proud of. 2025 seems to be revealing a bitter irony. American tourism is losing billions of dollars, leaving cities dependent on international visitors mired in losses and unemployment. And within the heart of America, migrations are soaring. Is the American dream now just a faded brand? In today's video, we won't just list the phenomenon, but delve into each layer of the issue, from the wallet of an average tourist to the wavering beliefs of an entire nation. And then you'll have to ask yourself, is America still truly home, or just a temporary stop on the journey to find something better? The data and information in this video come from official reports and international media. We are not making absolute claims, but are only presenting a picture for everyone to reflect on and discuss together. Let's get started. Have you noticed that every time the dollar strengthens, ordinary people feel weaker? It sounds counterintuitive, but just take a look. A latte in New York now costs over $7. In Mexico City, the same amount of money would be enough to feed the whole family a decent lunch. Going to America or Mexico, the choice is no longer difficult. In 2025, the US dollar was hailed by numerous economic analysts and the media as strong and a symbol of financial stability. It sounds fancy, but ask ordinary people if they find this interesting. For tourists, this means more expensive airfare, hotels that raise prices like galloping horses, and even a simple or frugal dinner can cost hundreds of dollars. A trip to the US is now no different from a venture capital investment, only suitable for the wealthy. The reasons are probably clear to everyone: high interest rates, prolonged inflation, and monetary policy pushing up the value of the USD. But the bigger question is, who really bears the consequences? Of course, it's not the CEOs sitting in Manhattan offices with their own private jets, but rather middle-class families from Europe, Canada, and Japan. People who once flocked to America to see Broadway and take pictures in front of the Statue of Liberty. Now they're cancelling flights and rerouting to Portugal, Thailand, or even Mexico itself, where their currency is worth twice or 3 times as much. And the bitter irony is, even Americans are starting to look for a way out. A retired couple in Ohio said that with a $2,000 pension, they could only afford a temporary motel room in the US. But in Mexico, they have an apartment overlooking the sea, plus medicine that's cheaper by more than half. They left America, leaving behind a bitter statement. For the first time, we lived like human beings with dignity. It's heartbreaking to hear. The currency is strong, but life is weak. The American dream now feels like a luxury item in a glass case. Beautiful to look at, but out of reach for the average person. The currency is strong, but the lives of ordinary people are becoming increasingly fragile. Will America, after all, become a paradise? Yes, of course, but it's only for a billionaire's wallet. So the question is, when a cup of coffee in New York costs as much as a whole family meal in Mexico, will you choose the expensive American dream or a simple but easy life elsewhere? And this is just the beginning. Let's continue to follow along to see how cleverly America has hidden images of instability to attract tourists. Have you ever noticed? Just one genuine photo is sometimes more powerful than a $100 million advertising campaign. In 2025, those photos won't be of Times Square glittering with neon lights, but of rows of tents crammed together under the shadow of skyscrapers. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland. Instead of symbolizing the American dream, These cities are now densely populated on TikTok with street horror tour videos. People don't need to pay for ghost tours anymore. Just walking a few blocks downtown is enough to see the nightmare unfold. And the tourists? They cancelled the tour. Canadians who used to love visiting Vegas for entertainment are now choosing to stay in Vancouver. European tourists who originally wanted to visit San Francisco are now diverting to Barcelona. If you regularly follow the news and analyses, you probably understand the reasons. Housing is expensive, incomes haven't kept pace, and the government is struggling like a broken-down car on the side of the road. As a result, streets that should be filled with music are now littered with syringes, makeshift beds, and vacant stairs. A funny yet thought-provoking story from an Uber driver in LA. There's a group of guests from Tokyo who just landed. They opened the car door and saw tents lined up along the road from the airport. 10 minutes later, they asked to return to change their tickets for a direct flight to Hawaii. A city loses visitors not because it lacks beautiful scenery, but because there's so much reality that they can't believe this is the place they once longed to set foot in once in their lives. America the Beautiful was once an immortal song. But as the current images flood social media, it inadvertently transforms into America the Fearful. Even ordinary Americans watching that scene must have wondered, if tourists don't even dare to go out on the streets, should we, the people who live here, continue to stay? We can try to avoid it and console ourselves that it's just a small hidden corner. But it's hard to hide when every phone has a camera and every network spreads information in an instant. One iPhone, one 30-second clip, enough to wipe out any glossy advertising campaign. The final question is the most frightening. Is the image the world is seeing an exception? Or has it become the true face of America? But this isn't the worst part. In 2025, the thing that could turn tourists away from the United States might appear the moment they intend to apply for a visa to come here. Don't take your eyes off the screen because the next part is very important for anyone planning to come to the US. Want to go to America in 2025? Be prepared. You'll have to wait for months, queue for interviews, pay all sorts of fees, and then you could still be denied right at the airport gate. A visa lottery ticket. But this is the kind of lottery where even if you win, you're not guaranteed entry into the hall. On September 6th, 2025, the US Department of State officially ended its policy of allowing visa applications and interviews in third countries. That means you have to return to your country of residence or citizenship to complete the procedures. Visa appointments are extended by 6 to 12 months, just like booking a table at a fancy restaurant and having to wait until next Christmas for a spot. And in the meantime, tourists from Canada and Europe, traditional markets, were cancelling their trips en masse. Statistics show that inbound tourism has dropped by 8.2%, leading to millions of empty airline seats and numerous hotel rooms with no guests. And you know what? Behind those numbers, it's not just about security or immigration policy. It's a kind of time tax, an invisible tax on patience and wallets. The waiting time, travel costs, and risk of rejection all lead many people to choose the simple option, not going anymore. A Toronto businessman recounted that he scheduled 4 interviews, each time they were postponed, and he ultimately cancelled his trip to Florida altogether. And you know what? He chose Mexico, where the procedures are easier and the cost is also lower. This doesn't just affect tourists. Workers on the Detroit or Seattle border, taxi drivers, hotel staff, restaurant owners suddenly lost their regular customers. An empty hotel room isn't just a few unoccupied beds. It's tips that don't reach the servers. It's front desk staff's shifts being cut short. That image is reminiscent of a domino. One visa appointment falls, triggering a whole chain of lost income. Bitterly, America once promised to be the gateway to freedom. Now, even Disneyland, touted as the happiest place on earth, requires visitors to overcome more obstacles than a roller coaster. Isn't it just a vivid satire? So the remaining question is, while Europe opens its doors in invitation, will visitors choose to stand in line for hours at the US border? Or will they calmly cross the border somewhere else, where welcome truly means something? But the greater irony is not that tourists are turning away, but that Americans themselves are beginning to realize the American dream is slowly disappearing from their everyday lives. Let's continue. You know, there's a statistic that sends shivers down your spine more than any GDP or inflation figures. 61% of Americans believe their children will live worse lives than they do. Stop and think. If you no longer believe the family's future will be better, what's left to keep you here? A shopping cart at Walmart speaks volumes more than a lengthy speech about the economy. Because there, you don't hear how many percentage points the CPI has increased, but you see it immediately. A bag of milk, a loaf of bread, a pound of beef. Everything is more expensive than last month. The CPI for food at home increased by 2.2% compared to last year, while eating out increased by nearly 4%. That means for the same shopping cart, today you have to add a few more greenbacks. Meanwhile, when international visitors look at America now, they don't just see the Statue of Liberty or glamorous boulevards. They read the newspapers. They see student debt piling up. They see the healthcare system devouring fortunes. They hear Americans themselves lamenting that the American dream is just a faded wall poster. And they lost interest. Who would want to travel to a place where even the locals don't believe in the future? The reasons aren't just about money. This is also a psychological issue, an issue of trust. America was once a shining example, where everyone thought that just by going there, everything would be better. But in 2025, it was the American people themselves who began openly searching for retire in Costa Rica or cheap homes in Canada. It's not because they hate their homeland, but because they no longer feel safe in this very house. A teacher in Texas wrote on the forum, "I love America, but I don't love its medical bills." After reading it, I could only manage a bitter laugh. People still say freedom isn't free. Freedom is never free. Well, yeah, but no one said it would come with a 3-page bill. Ironically, the government may declare inflation is under control, but ask yourself, how can you control it when the shopping basket in front of you is emptier each week? The question is the problem solely about price? Or is there a shrinking American dream behind it all, from supermarkets to clinics? Let's continue to see the bigger picture, where medical bills can be even heavier than grocery bills. The American dream was once associated with a small house, a green lawn, and a car parked in front of the garage. But in 2025, that dream will be like a layaway item. Not for a house, but for medicine and medical bills. It is estimated that the US spends an average of over $12,000 per person annually on healthcare, twice as much as Canada or most of Europe. And according to a survey, over 70% of Americans over 45 are worried that they won't have enough money to cover their healthcare costs in retirement. Even more frightening, this isn't a distant worry, but a bill that arrives in your mailbox every month. The problem isn't just that medicine and hospital fees are expensive. It's part of a patchwork system. Private insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, each a piece of the puzzle. Without centralized price controls, insulin, which costs only a few dozen dollars in Mexico, becomes $600 per month in Florida. A retired couple said that after 40 years of paying taxes, they still have to go to Tijuana to buy medicine. It sounds both sad and bitter. In the US, doctors can save your life, but the bill can thin your wallet even before that. That is the bitter contradiction of an advanced but unattainable healthcare system. People still call it healthcare, but many joke that it should be changed to wealth care. Only those with money truly receive care. And this is why many Americans are considering finding a new home. In Portugal, private health insurance only costs a few $100s a year. In Mexico, the cost of medical care is often only 1/10. The question naturally arises, if money earned with difficulty in the US can last many times longer elsewhere, why keep paying installments on the American dream right in your own homeland? Isn't that ironic? The old slogan was, "The American dream is alive and well." Now many people joke that alive is a maybe, but well is not guaranteed. But if healthcare is so expensive, why do so many people still stay in America, still try to hold on to a crumbling dream? The answer might lie in history, in identity, and also in the belief that no matter where you go, there's no place like home. There was a time when America was the destination for the whole world. In the early 20th century, millions of people crowded through Ellis Island, carrying dreams of freedom and opportunity. But now, a paradox is occurring. Instead of welcoming immigrants, America is seeing a reverse flow. Americans themselves are leaving. It is estimated that approximately 9 million Americans are living abroad. This figure is controversial as the State Department stopped publishing official statistics in 2024. But even if the exact figures are unclear, the trend is undeniable. More and more Americans are seeking retirement havens, retirement paradises in Mexico, Portugal, and Costa Rica. Why? Partly it's economic. For the same amount of money, they could rent an apartment by the sea in the Algarve, have breakfast with coffee and pastries, and pay medical bills that are cheaper than cable TV in the US. But deeper than that is a sense of unease, political division, gun violence, cumbersome procedures. Create an atmosphere that makes many people feel unwelcome even in their own homeland. The story of a 65-year-old former sailor is proof of this. He moved to Lisbon and said frankly, "There, I bought private health insurance for the price of electricity in Texas." A simple sentence, but it sounds both sad and ironic. In the country where he served, he couldn't afford his own healthcare. Ellis Island was once the gateway to the American dream. Now people joke bitterly. Ellis Island is closed. The exit line is open. And that exit line isn't just at the international airport. It's also in the minds of millions of middle-class Americans who are weighing stay and endure or leave and start over. The question for us is, what makes a superpower, once a magnet for immigrants, become a place where its own citizens seek to leave? And more importantly, what will happen if this wave coincides with a global event like the 2026 World Cup, when the whole world will be looking at the United States? That will probably be a real test of endurance. And the next story will show why a football tournament can become a stress test for an entire nation. Can a football trophy bring down a nation? It might sound exaggerated, but think again. The 2026 World Cup, the biggest sporting event on the planet, will be held right here in the United States, along with Canada and Mexico. The whole world will be watching North America, not just to see the ball roll, but to see if the host nation is truly open and welcoming, or if it will erect invisible barriers. The phenomenon is clear. With increasingly strict visa regulations, international travelers are considering where the match will be held. An Italian fan could easily fly to Toronto or Mexico City, quickly and with little hassle, instead of risking applying for a year just to see one game in New Jersey. And if hundreds of thousands of people choose that route, not only will the American stands be empty, but hotels, restaurants, and taxis around the stadium will also be empty. This isn't just about football tickets. This is an international image test. The world will look at America's entry procedures and wonder, how can a nation that once proclaimed itself a beacon of freedom now make tourists feel like they're applying to join an exclusive club? The World Cup is not just a match, but a huge economic engine. Each tourist brings thousands of dollars to spend. If the US allows that money to flow to Mexico and Canada, millions of service industry jobs will be affected. Waiters, drivers, hotel staff. They are the direct losers, not the politicians who write the regulations. A bitter image might emerge. The Toronto stands ablaze with the colours of Italian, German and Brazilian fans. And in New Jersey? Empty seats, even though the match is taking place right here in the US. Ironically, while the world plays soccer, does America kick itself with procedure? The question left here is, if the World Cup, a global event that should inherently be a golden opportunity, turns into a stress test for the United States, what will the outcome be? Will we witness a push for reform or a long slide that makes the American dream even more distant from its own people? And if even a sports festival can't save America's image, what will truly wake us up? Imagine a vacation turning into the beginning of a new life. A vacation visa suddenly became a relocation ticket. It sounds extreme, but it's a scenario that's taking shape. More and more Americans are traveling to Mexico, Canada, or Portugal, and then deciding not to return. The phenomenon is no longer rare. Statistics show that the number of Americans applying for long-term residency in Mexico has skyrocketed in recent years. In Portugal, coastal towns that were once deserted are now teeming with American retirees. And in Canada, many families are seeking to legalize their new lives after realizing that healthcare and living costs are much more manageable. The cause is simple, but profound. Initially, it was just a trip to get a change of scenery. But then, when comparing bills, a meal out is only half the price of one in New York, a doctor's visit costs the same as a taxi, a beachfront apartment is only the cost of renting an old apartment in Florida. Many people wonder, why go back? This is the trend of grey nomads, middle-aged and older Americans who take their dollars far, live longer and more comfortably in other countries. They are not against America. They are just choosing where their money is more respected. And as a result, millions of dollars that would have flowed into American restaurants, hospitals and stores are instead going to support foreign economies. Ironically, millions of tourists cancelled their trips to the US. But thousands of Americans are renouncing their American consumer citizenship altogether. It's not the flag, it's not the passport, it's the spending habits back home. And the big question echoed, if even Americans are looking for new homes, then whose American dream is it anyway? Is it still a dream for the whole world to pursue? Or is it just a beautiful memory in history books? That's when we need to discuss. Have you ever thought about leaving the US? If so, what is your dream destination? So, we've come full circle. From international tourists cancelling their trips to the US, to Americans themselves considering cancelling, even their hometown addresses. A paradoxical journey, but also very real. This picture isn't just about numbers, an 8.2% drop in tourism. Millions of dollars evaporated, 86% of Americans considering leaving. But also about very ordinary stories. A cup of coffee costing more, a medical bill eating up an entire pension, a trip diverted to Mexico because US visas are too cumbersome. Are there any images that still linger? An empty supermarket cart, a Medicare bill, an empty World Cup stadium. These are small pieces, but they are deeply etched in the mind because they reflect our daily lives. Ironically, the American dream was once built with bricks of hope and freedom. Now, it sometimes looks like a house on mortgage. You're still in it, but you're not sure you can afford next month. And this is where I want to hear from you. If you had the opportunity to leave the US for a cheaper, easier life, would you go? Or will you stay, try to hold on, and hope the American dream will revive? Please leave a comment below. I believe that your story and real-life experiences are the most vivid evidence. If you find this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next Analyzers. This isn't just about tourism or economics. It's a question about the future of each and every one of us. This analysis and observation is based on public data and news sources and is not migration or investment advice. The goal is to spark discussion so that we, Those living through this turbulent period can ask questions and find answers together.